poor black person meets a white person and suddenly their life is better. A poor black person meets a white person and now they can get their shit together. White people to the rescue. What would we do without you? You make all our dreams come true. White people to the rescue. Poor black boys are really good at sports, but only when a white coach tells them. Poor black boys would just do what destroys till a white coach comes along to help them. White people to the rescue. What would we do without you? You make all our dreams come true. White people to the rescue. Whether we want to dance or sing or simply just survive, we only need some white people and we will truly thrive. Poor black lasses would bail all their classes till a white teacher stops to teach them. Poor black lasses would shake and pump their asses till a white teacher tries to reach them. Poor black orphans would live off their endorphins. Not much else rhymes with orphans. White people to the rescue. What would we do without you? You make all our dreams come true. White people to the rescue. White people to the rescue. What would we do without you? White people to the rescue. What would we do without you?
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Hollop, a.k.a. Mr. Holipsis, a.k.a. the Buzz Killer. Tune in to Holipsism's Haven every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we discuss the social, economic, and political issues of the day with a common-sense approach, an African-centered perspective, and a universal sensibility. Call-in number 347-843-4874. That's 347-843-4874. To check out related YouTube videos, blogs, and show archives, visit www.holipsism.com. That's www.holipsism.com. I'm making it hard to get your Negro on. Hotep, Black Power.
There's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad.
and thrown things from the door of an airplane. See, they like to be in an airplane. So see, it's like God coming. So they can take pictures of people, black people looking up at the sky. It's more pictures of black people on rooftops looking up at the sky behind New Orleans and Katrina, I think, than any other photographs in history.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What you call it?
I mean, that's very symbolic. See, I mean, a white man, I mean, a 23-year-old white guy in a helicopter door, throwing a line down, on television during the time of Katrina. One thing that they kept showing over and over and over again was a white guy who had dropped down to a rooftop, and he had this black woman, with her dress all the way up around her waist. Big legs were showing. I mean, everything was showing. I mean, behind and everything wrapped around his waist, almost like they were having sexual intercourse in the air.
Wow.
Okay. And the helicopter was pulling them up, and she was holding on to him with her arms around, his neck, was facing in front of him, for dear life.
Wow.
Right? And he looked to be, she was I guess a black woman. I say, because the photo was kind of distinct. I mean, the video. And I would say she was around maybe 40 years old. She had big brown legs. I mean, if you're sexually oriented, I mean, hey, it looked like a man, hey. What better position? I mean, because she was, in the sunlight. See, I mean, it's clear sunlight. I mean, her legs just wrapped right around his waist, just like they were having sexual intercourse in the air as the helicopter was pulling him up. And, with the helicopter blades, I mean, it just blowing her dress all the way up. See what I mean?
Wow.
And she had her arms around his neck. I say, now that's black people's salvation. That's a classic photo of what it takes to save black people. A middle-aged mother, maybe of 2 or 3 children there in New Orleans, with her legs wrapped around some 23-year-old white guy, young enough to be her son, and more or less saying, give it to me. See, very symbolic.
Wow.
Her husband's still on the roof. See what I mean? Yeah. It was a family of them, and she was the one they were pulling up, but that was the photo that they chose to put. See? In other words, we'll be back for you later, maybe.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, we're going to.
Context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade and Justice, and to share constructive information on racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. Clip from, that was Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. I want you to keep that clip in mind as we move forward with the discussion in terms of white people coming to the rescue and the symbolism of white people consistently being the figure of salvation for black people struggling. Mr. Fuller was speaking about the debacle in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, but he was making a connection between what happened there and what's happening right now in Haiti. So just keep that in mind. I'll bring it up again so you don't forget. Just keep that in mind as we move forward with the discussion today. Our guest for today's show, I've been chasing her since this summer. I saw her blog and just felt she had a lot of really solid information that I wanted to share with listeners. The first blog, I'm trying to think, she has 2 excellent blogs that I know of and maybe more. I'm trying to think of which one I saw first. I think it was a birth project. I could be wrong, but I think it was a birth project, and it's linked in the description if you want to check it out. Birth project, excuse me. Actually, you can check it. You don't need me to say it, but at birthproject.wordpress.com. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, click her name. It'll take you right there. That's the first blog that I saw, and she talked about her own experience being adopted by white parents. And really interesting, very honest, and just kind of going through some of her growing pains in that situation, as well as her own search for her biological parents. The second blog that I saw was AFAAD, which is Adopted and Fostered Adults of the African Diaspora. That also is linked in the description for this program. I really think just incredibly important, the work that she does, the blogs that she maintains, and this topic in general in terms of non-white children being adopted by white parents. Incredibly important, especially with what's going on in Haiti right now. We definitely are going to talk about that, but I'm very happy my persistence paid off. Our guest for today's program, UC Berkeley PhD candidate. I'll have to go back and change the show description in a couple months and put doctor next to it. But right now, our guest for today's program, Lisa Marie Rollins. Miss Rollins, are you with us?
I am. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for hanging out with us. Real treat to get you on the show. Always lovely to have cute females on the program. Seems like we never end up with them. It's always older guys and or older females. So I'm pleased as punch and to get excellent information. Can you please share with our listeners, I guess you also, I want to make sure I get all your credits in, founder and executive director of Adopted and Fostered Adults of the African Diaspora. Can you please share with our listeners just any information about who you are and the work that you do?
Well, there's a lot. First, let me say I can give you a little bit of history of AFAAD. I began AFAAD in 2006 with a collective of other Black adoptees. The idea for AFAAD began at the end of 2004, beginning of 2005. I started my blog, A Birth Project, and I started the blog basically just to initially chronicle my search for my birth parents and to talk about what it meant for me to be a grown Black woman living in and having family that are all white, and then also to talk about my history, growing up, a childhood in an all-white neighborhood, going to a school with majority white folks, and just to share that information with the world. And so I started blogging. I was doing that work for a few months, and at the same time writing my solo show, Ungrateful Daughter, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But the blog, all of a sudden I was immersed inside of this conversation and this community of adult adoptees who had been researching and writing about this work for years that I had no idea about. And there were international adoptees, transracial adoptees, domestic and international, who had blogs that were already very active and also very critical. And I immediately felt embraced by this community and really, really supported, and they really validated a lot of the things that I had to say about, applying a critical eye, an eye that is from a Black perspective, from an African diasporic perspective, onto the system of adoption, and particularly the process of transracial adoption. But what I kept finding was that the adoptees who I was connecting with and developing relationships with and collaborating with and doing activist work with were mostly international adoptees, Korean adoptees, Vietnamese adoptees, and recently found groups of Guatemalan adoptees, Chinese adoptees. And these were folks who've been doing work around adoption for a very long time. And I just, of course, because my work is in African diaspora study, my immediate question is, where are the Black adoptees? I know we're here. And So that was where the original idea for AFAAD began, was to simply have an email list and to provide support for adoptees across the globe who were experiencing kind of the same kinds of experiences that we were having, and feeling like we were isolated, or like we were by ourselves, or we were the only people having these experiences. And so originally it just started out as an email list, but but it developed into a full-fledged organization after about, I would say, 6 months or so of a group of us coming together and recognizing the extraordinary need for there being a unified voice, a unified Black voice, and then a unified global Black voice that has something to say about the system of adoption, both internationally and domestically in the United States. So that's how the organization began. And so for the past few years, we've been focusing on developing our membership, just letting people know that we exist, developing our board, and having our annual gathering for adoptees. This is an idea that we got from Korean adoptees who've been having annual gatherings for years and years, and these are gatherings that are for adoptees and foster care alumni only. And, there's a myriad of adoption conferences and social welfare conferences that focus on adoption, but the majority of those are either run by adoption agencies that are led by white parents or by social workers who may have adopted children of color, but there was no annual or any kind of gathering for adoptees themselves. And so this was something that we glommed onto immediately, and so we had 2 gatherings so far. Our first one was in 2008, November 2008, and our last one was November 2009, and both were amazing. People came from all over the United States. This year we had some folks come from Canada, and all transracial adoptees or foster care alumni or same-race adoptees, Black adoptees adopted by Black families that recognize a place for them inside of AFAAD around support and adoption, because there's similar and disparate issues with same-race adoption. I mean, adoption is a system of displacement regardless of where you're getting displaced to. And so that's something we can talk about more in depth when we're talking about trauma and we're talking about Haiti, which I'm happy to do. But so the gathering itself, we provided workshops. We have around negotiating your birth family and your adoptive family, negotiating your birth family and adoptive family when they're of 2 different races, negotiating your relationships with your community of origin. Many transracial adoptees are raised in situations where they're isolated from the Black community and don't have any connection, and their family doesn't necessarily have any connection or any Black friends or any people of color friends. And so that reinsertion of trying to find your way back to the Black community can sometimes be challenging for adoptees. And if there's no one there to provide you with language or support, that's one of the things that we're trying to do, to just share our experiences around that. So the gathering itself has become one of our biggest and most important educational events for adoptees, and foster care alumni. So that's just basically sort of our background and some of the work that we do on the ground with our members. And then, of course, the larger political advocacy thing around having, fully informed research statements about, these kinds of things that are happening globally, like Haiti. So that's the work of AFAAD and some of the things that we're doing.
Outstanding. I want to hop right in to see if we can cover as much as possible. I guess number one, it seems you've already shared you are a black female, correct?
I am black and Filipino. That's my heritage. I identify as a black woman and sometimes as a mixed race black woman when we're talking about light skin privilege and that kind of thing. But in terms of my politics, I identify as a black woman. Yes.
Okay. This program, the C.O.W.S, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy, and the definition that I use for both racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
I believe that such a system exists, and I agree that it's global, and I agree that there is a group of people who classify themselves as white, but how they participate in the system of white supremacy, I feel like, is knowing and unknowing. And so I don't know that I agree that every white person does it knowingly. So,
okay.
But I agree that every white person participates in it.
Oh, okay. That has popped up. That's popped up frequently in people's response to the definition, and I always clarify that I'm not saying in the definition that all white people participate, nor am I saying that white people participate consciously or unconsciously. I just believe that the people who do participate in the system of white supremacy are dedicated to seeing that it stays in place, and I think the overwhelming evidence shows that. But cool in the gang. I'm real.
Let me also clarify that I believe that people of color can also participate in the system of white supremacy. So, and reinforcing it. So I just want to, I feel like we've been impacted by it so much that at times we don't necessarily have a clear picture of the ways that we are being self-determinant or thinking about our own cultural sovereignty. I feel like sometimes the ways that we've been impacted by the system of white supremacy have a major impact on our ability to do that. So I just want to make that clear.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I would say that all non-white people support the system of white supremacy as long as it exists, myself included. I'm not aware of any non-white person who does not in some way, shape, or form support the system of white supremacy directly and or indirectly. I'm real curious. Your story, incredible. Probably worthy of a movie or two. Movie and a book. There we go. I'm just, I guess if I was going to start with anything, you are supposed to be a female of Asian mix, according to Washington State birth records or the Washington State Adoption Agency. Can you start us, I guess, there with the story of Lisa Marie Rollins?
So I don't know how much your listeners know about the history of adoption, but as a global institution, but in the United States, there's been several different waves of international adoption that have happened, and the most well-known being the Vietnam baby lift and the Korean baby lift during both of those wars, and after there's a precedent that was set up in terms of the relationship of child removal from those countries into the United States and other European countries.
Mm.
So in the 1970s, there was also still remnants of Asian adoption happening in the United States, and similar as to what we're seeing right now, white people who are Christian and colorblind and just want to give a child a loving home have an interest in adopting without necessarily understanding the implications of how race will impact their parenting.
Mm.
And my parents were no different. My parents went to the adoption agency and they asked for an Asian mixed baby. And but they got me. And it's my theory that the adoption agency basically packaged me as a half Asian child without documenting my Black ancestry so that I would be more marketable to potential adoptive parents.
Wow.
And so this is not an uncommon story. So anyone who has done research or any reading around adoption knows that the falsification of adoption records is a common story for adoption agencies from the early 1920s, 1930s, the beginning of the social welfare system, all the way until now. So this the falsification of my documents is not a surprise. What was a surprise, I think, to my parents and to myself is how, and I actually found out later that early on in reading some of my adoption home visits documents, that neighbors or relatives, not relatives necessarily, neighbors or people who had come to visit me after I'd been placed in my family had asked if I was Negro. And asked if I was a colored child, and because it's in the documents of social worker documents, and so I think my parents did ask the social worker again then if there was any possibility that I might be Black, and but it was already documented that I wasn't. The document said that my birth mother was Filipino and white, and my birth father was Mexican and Irish. And so growing up then, I lived in this really strange in-between space where, on the one hand, the people who are loving me and raising me and teaching me about the world are telling me that I'm not Black, yet when I walk out into the world, I'm getting responded to as if I'm a Black child. And let me say that when I talk about this, my childhood, I'm definitely talking about it from a perspective of a grown person looking back onto incidents that happened to me as a child that I can now identify and say, that was completely racist, what happened to me. So there are just multiple incidents, and some of them that y'all can go read on my blog, but multiple incidents of teachers and students, church folk, church community, multiple incidents of racism that happened to me growing up where I didn't understand them as racism, and there weren't people there, there weren't people there because my parents didn't have a language around racism and didn't necessarily understand how racism and the system of white supremacy exists, they don't have the tools either to identify things that are happening to me that are racist. And they basically are supporting me around people hurting my feelings. They're supporting me around other people, not being Christian or and a lot of their response to things was, we have to forgive them because this is the way that, it's God's law for us to forgive people. I was raised in a very Republican Christian evangelical home, and my parents are still that way now, and still very Republican, still very conservative, and still live in a community that's all white. And but they so the messages that were getting sent to me were messages that are basically this is that these people are just bad people, and not everybody's like that, and so you shouldn't pay attention to them, and not necessarily understanding that a lot of the things that were happening to me were racialized. People calling me names, or people or boys not liking me because I'm black, or and talking about it explicitly, like you not believe. Anyway, so
Wow.
so there's a history of my relationship with white people in the community where I grew up that is a history filled with a lot of pain and a lot of isolation, and so it really, so this whole thing around my parents not necessarily recognizing me or seeing me as black becomes really, really important, particularly when we're talking about the current time, which I know we'll get to later, and particularly when we're talking about the white families that are bringing the Haitian children in and are bringing them to communities in Kansas and Kentucky and Colorado and these communities, and that are also fundamentalist evangelical Christian communities. So it's a struggle for me to watch this happen and see the same things replicated over and over when supposedly we've moved on to some point around racism and people are supposed to be more educated and they're supposed to be acknowledging difference. And I don't necessarily see that happening as I'm watching this unfold. But, so it took a very long time before I began to assert myself as a black girl, and before I began to understand myself as a black girl, and then to claim myself as a black girl. And I feel like this was a evolving thing that happened, and excuse me, and I feel like most black people, not just me as someone who's transracially adopted, a lot of my development in terms of my black identity came when I began at the end of high school and beginning of the university, when I started taking black studies classes in college and started understanding myself as part of the African diaspora. And there's a really great quote from another fellow adoptee, Dr. John Rubble, who also has a website that folks should check out and keep up with. He was one of the founding board members of AFAAD and is now working on his tenure. But he has a really great statement about, the transracial adoptee search for identity is a search for identity that all black people have as members of the African diaspora, and that we're all searching for a home, and that we're all searching for a way to think about how we fit inside this larger system of white supremacy. And so that identity development certainly happened to me at a similar pace as most, as I feel like most black folks develop their black identity. And but I feel like it was much more of a struggle for me because I didn't have Black people around me assisting me and supporting me when racist things were happening to me. So. And there was something else I was going to say, too, about that distance of, my parents identifying me as a Black girl and me identifying myself as a Black girl, Black woman now, it was really, there's this really great video, and I'll send it to you afterwards. There's a really great video. It's a theater group that came up with a sketch of a Korean adoptee who's adopted by white parents who it's a comedic sketch and he's basically sitting his parents down and telling him that he has something important to tell them, and they keep trying to guess what it is. They're like, are you gay? If you're gay, we'll support you. Or are you, you have a disease, we'll support you, whatever it is. And he finally stands up and says, I'm coming out to you, Mom and Dad, I'm coming out as an Asian. And they're like, oh my God, you're Asian, and completely appalled by this idea that he could be anything other than the white child that they raised him to be. And but it's a comedic sketch, but it has these amazing implications for this notion of colorblindness that is still immensely popular in the discourse of adoption that's happening now. And that this idea that it doesn't matter what color children are, as long as they have a family and as long as they have someone to love them, then it'll be okay. And what that colorblind attitude doesn't acknowledge is that there are differences, there are cultural differences, there are historical differences that need to be acknowledged, and it really gets to the heart of the ways that white people want to render invisible the question of race, because they just don't either want to deal with it or they don't have the tools to deal with it. And so one of the things in terms of our position around adoption is AFAAD's position around adoption is really for the families that have already adopted, there has to be an acknowledgement that your child is a different race. You need to move into a city or somewhere where there are more people of color. You cannot raise that child out in the middle of nowhere. And you, whether or not you know it or not, have committed yourself to a lifetime of as an anti-racist ally. And those are things that we are encouraging people who have already adopted to recognize and take on. I recognize I went way off there a little bit. Hello? Uh-oh. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Can I be heard? You can hear me? Yes, you can hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, we'll try that again. Not deviation from the topic at all. Fascinating information, I guess, for today's program. University of California, Berkeley, PhD candidate Lisa Marie Rollins. The blog, birthproject.wordpress.com. One more time, birthproject.wordpress.com. Just click her name if you are listening at Blog Talk Radio. Several things hopped out there. Wow. I guess number one, were you identifying as Asian when you were growing up at any point, or were you caught up in this duplicity too?
No, and I think I call it more of denial because I feel like, well, a couple things. I feel like I call it denial. I call it that my parents were, and family, excuse me, were unable to actually, unable and at some points actually unwilling to recognize that I was black, visibly or otherwise. In terms of my own understanding of myself as a child, there was no, just the thing is that I didn't identify anyway. There was no discussion of race, and that's the thing. The discussions of race were all from people from the outside who were projecting things onto me. So if I walk down the street or I'm at school and someone calls me a nigger, that is a conversation about race that I would have to figure out how to engage at that moment, even if I had no idea what that word meant. And so, but when I went home to have these conversations, the conversation was never necessarily about race. The conversation was about these people being bad people. Not necessarily, there are some people in the world who don't like black people, and because you're black, this is what's going to happen. And so, or even conversations, around, after that I know of, and there might be. My parents and I haven't necessarily talked about this, which is actually a good thing for me to talk about with them. But because we do have conversations now as grown people around race. But anyway, but as far as I know, there wasn't even the additional go back of find out who that kid's parents were and talk to them about what that meant. It was basically, we're going to pray for them, and, that doesn't have anything to do with you, and you're okay, and we love you just the way you are. And so in terms of the ways that I began to understand myself as a person of color were my interactions with other people of color. When black folks would recognize me, how we do with our nods of recognition, basically, and would recognize me and ask me, "What are you mixed with?" That's the question. What are you mixed with? And I would say, I'm whatever, a Mexican, Filipino, and white. And the response would always be, "You're not black?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm adopted, and I don't know whether or not I'm black because it doesn't say I'm on the, and so there's this whole conversation around that, and, but the documentation says this one thing, but then other people would be like, girl, you are black, So, and that that conversation actually continued all the way, like I'm saying, through college, and it was really interesting. I wrote, as I was working on a few posts for a birth project a few years ago, I had one of my girlfriends from high school email me and was like, she apparently found my blog and read my entire blog. It was in, 3 days or something like that.
Wow. And
wrote me this 5-page email about her response to what she thought and what my high school community thought of me in high school. That I had no idea there was all this speculation about the way that I identified in high school. I was just moving through as me, and apparently there was a speculation around me not wanting to admit that I was black. And I had no idea that this was a conversation that was happening. And while the majority of my friends were black, and or I would say in high school, it depends on which high school I was. I went to a myriad of high schools. one of the things also that's common for adoptees, same-race adoptees or transracial adoptees, but it's common for transracial adoptees, around age 13, 14, 15, of course, puberty, adolescence, all those things, there's starting to be a resistance and a distancing from our caretakers and our parents, and assertion of our own identities. And I was running away. I was getting kicked out of school. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on for me at that time, and my relationship to school and those private school institutions and the way that they were treating me, that I also see replicated with some of the youth that I work with right now. So anyway, but in high school, apparently there was all this speculation about me not wanting to admit that I was Black, and for me, it was just about trying to be as authentic as I knew how to be, and this is what I know about my history, and so this is what I can say. I have no idea what my history is, but this is what I can say. But that's also when I began to sort of understand the difference between the way that I identify myself politically and personally versus the way that other people look at me on the outside and project what I'm supposed to be. And so that question of what I am began to get articulated a bit more as I became more and more immersed in the Black community. The majority of my friends were Black. I was going to Black church, and through the end of high school and university, and understanding myself as a Black woman before I actually even found out that my birth father was Black, which was only like 2 years ago, something like that. So, and I'm old, so.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
So, and in terms of my parents' development and understanding me, and as a Black woman, I do remember very specifically the first time my dad ever said anything to me when I got my first master's in 2000 at Claremont Graduate University. I didn't do the large graduation. I just did Black graduation. And, and so, but it was also one of the first times that my parents, I think, got to actually see the diversity of the Black community and understand it in a diasporic sense, and not just like through going to a Black church. My parents have, my life, have gone to Black churches and not as members, but gone to Black churches either as speakers or as exchange or whatever, as collaborative things between their church and another church, that kind of thing. Or when they come to town to visit me, because I don't attend church anymore, they still go to the churches that are right around my corner here in West Oakland, where I live now. So I know my parents are interesting people. But they, I'm sorry. Oh, I lost my. What was I talking about right before that?
Graduation, first time they saw.
Right, and so graduation, Black graduation in 2000. It was the first time I actually, as graduate students, the graduate university students had a few moments to speak, and I got to speak during that time. But then after the speaking and after the graduation was over, and we're all in fellowship afterwards, having dinner. And they're meeting all of my friends, my friends' parents, understand, looking at the diversity of, the diaspora. We're like, Creole and Caribbean and Ethiopian and African, you know what I'm saying? We're from everywhere, and we're all different shades. We're all different colors. And so for them to sort of be able to place me inside of that visually, I think was a huge turning point in our relationship, of them understanding me as a Black woman and being a part of the diaspora community. And it was also the first time that my dad actually said to me, it's really amazing for me to see you here as a Black woman and to see you around all of these other amazing people. And I'm just, and then went on to the dad stuff of I'm so proud of you and that kind of thing. So, but for me, I was like, oh, damn, that's the first time that my father has actually acknowledged that I'm a Black woman. And so it was a really important shift in our relationship, although a lot of things have and haven't changed, but and particularly in my extended family and my community, which I would like to talk about more than my family as well. But yeah, so my development as a Black woman is complicated in that sense of, I have this family who does, for a long time, didn't actually see me as part of this larger diaspora community. And then at some point was able to recognize me as such. And I think, and one point that I wanted to make about that too is that in the conversation around adoption, and not just the conversation of race, but this is where thinking about how to separate those two is really important, because adoption itself as a rupture for anyone who's adopted, removed from a family of origin and put into another family, and regardless of how loving and caring that family is, there still is a, at some point, questions around how and where I really fit inside this family, whether or not it's like the mirror thing. I don't know what I look like. I can look at the rest of my family and see, their eyes look the same, their noses look the same. They have my aunt's hair, whatever. But adoptees, regardless of whether or not they're same race or transracial, don't have that mirror. And so there's a question of belonging within the family. And then there's also like many stories of the subliminal things of like whether or not adoptees are in the will, or whether or not adoptees get things passed down that get passed down to blood family members, or those weren't things that happened to me necessarily. But the point is that asserting yourself as an adoptee and asserting yourself as having an identity that includes adoption or that includes a racial identity, when you're in a family of, it doesn't matter whether or not that family is white or that family is Black, it leaves you up for another kind of rejection, like whether or not my family is capable of me having questions or asserting myself as having some sort of needs around me being adopted, and are they able to support those needs or not? And so that question of like, if I say I would like to find my birth family, or I would like to just have questions, even if I don't want to find them, is my birth mother my adoptive mother going to be hurt by that? Is she going to be offended by that? Are extended family members going to be offended by that? The whole discourse around adoption and then as it moves to transracial adoption is around the notion of gratefulness and being thankful that you are saved from whatever unimaginable, horrible life that you would have had if not for these people. And so how then can you question what's happening? So that's why I feel like the question is even more important when we put race on top of it, because it is a question of power and whiteness that comes in there when we're talking about a Black child having questions about their white parents who they are supposed to be grateful to. And I say not necessarily just Black children, but any child of color. I think that there's a struggle there in terms of power and ownership that emerges. So.
Wow. I want people, keep that in mind. It's coming. few more things I want to touch on, but when we get to the adoption of Haitian children, keep that in mind. Questions of power and ownership in a system of white supremacy. Just bold print, underline, highlight that part. Again, our guest for today's program, executive director and founder of Adopted and Fostered Adults of the African Diaspora, Lisa Marie Rollins. Just with what you just shared with us, and I think this is incredible because, and I really hope people appreciate this because this is a story that, just if you're a typical black person or a typical non-white person, this is an aspect of how being a non-white person in a system of white supremacy that you really wouldn't get, that you really wouldn't hear unless you hear it directly from someone who went through this. When I spoke with you before the program, you talked about how often in these situations where white parents have adopted a non-white child, they will cloak that child in the veil of white privilege and tokenize that non-white child. This is a dual question here. I feel you're skilled enough. You can knock this out of the park. Can you explain? you can even get a sip of water to prepare. Can you explain for our listeners what you mean when you say that? And can you share if you feel this took place with you, that your adopted parents attempted to tokenize you or place that veil of white privilege on you?
It's such a great question because it gets to, sorry. Yikes. It's such a great question because it gets to the heart of a lot of, sorry.
You're good.
Okay. I don't know what just happened now. When we were talking about that, I think we were talking about the difficulty in that adult.
Okay, I think we lost Miss Rollins. Hang tight 1 second. I will ring her back in. Just hang tight, everybody. I'm going to play a commercial so we don't have dead space.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Okay, I think we have everybody back now. Ms. Rollins, are you with us?
I am. I'm sorry. I got disconnected somehow.
No worries. This happens frequently enough that I suspect this could be interference from racist white supremacists. But you were giving us a Berkeley PhD answer to what it means to be tokenized and placed under the veil of white privilege as an adopted non-white child by white parents, and if that happened to you.
Well, one of the things that we, as researchers who've been, and when I say we, I don't mean AFAAD necessarily, I mean those of us who've done work around transracial adoption.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we see is, again, this question of colorblindness that I mentioned a little bit earlier, this notion that love is enough and that there isn't necessary, as long as I treat this child like any other child in my family, that everything will be okay and he or she will grow up to be a healthy, whole person. And what we know is, and what we've learned from the research over the years, is that that's not necessarily true. And what seems to happen in a lot of these situations is that white people seem to assume that they have enough power to, like, this is a little bit hard to explain, to like sort of put a veil around this child and protect them from all of the things that could actually happen from the outside. And so as long as I'm not in a black community and this child is being raised away from all of those things that stereotypical black youth do, or that is part of the black community's history and culture, then somehow they will be able to lead a life that is, a whole, healthy, citizen, participant in society, go to school and, go to college and all of those things that are that American dream. And what happens a lot of times in those circumstances is that instead of actually, there's sort of there's multiple ways that adoptees respond to this, but one of the ways that has become a coping mechanism for a lot of adoptees that I see are the ways that we begin to believe that we really are different and we really are somehow not a part of the black community, and that we don't really have any connection to those people, and that there's a distancing that happens that because we don't necessarily have a language and we don't know how to code switch. Basically, we don't know how to go from when I say code switching, what I mean is there's basically something that I feel that many black families teach their children to understand, that we do live in a white society, and that there's a way that when you go to work and when you go to school and when you go to situations where you're the one of the few people of color, there's a way that you communicate and engage with that particular system so that you can succeed in it. But there's also a way that we talk with one another and at home and about our own circumstances. And so I feel like there's not necessarily, there's more of a fear placed on adoptees, transracial adoptees' engagement with their communities of origin. You're not really like those other people, rather than an insistence on you are a part of that community, regardless of whether or not you're being raised in our family. And and we're going to support you, knowing that you're a part of that community and having access to culture and those kind of things. There's really, I feel like, a distancing that happens. And I feel like it happens both knowingly and unknowingly. So I feel like there are parents that I watch now, like, with a lot of the youth that I work with that are aged like 13 to 19, where I see their parents like getting all excited because they're starting to listen to rap music and they're starting to, engage and make more black friends and the question is what did you think? Did you think that they weren't black? Did you think that when your son got old enough to date that he wasn't going to bring black women home? Did you think that your daughter wasn't going to bring black men home? So I think that that's something that, this distancing from the black community and this tokenization is something that I see happen sort of as one, and then the adoptee's participation in that knowingly or unknowingly as well as a coping mechanism to enforce my belonging inside this family, because where else am I going to go, really? And so, and I feel, and I feel that to say that is a extremely damaging perspective and stance to take. So personally, I feel like my parents did it unknowingly. They did it unknowingly and not just my parents. I feel like this sort of extends to also my extended family and the church community and the entire community where I grew up in Tacoma, on the north end of Tacoma, Washington, which I think people will find funny who live in Tacoma now, who know that Tacoma is considered to be more of a black town than it is anyway, which is a whole other conversation. But I grew up on the north end of Tacoma, Washington, and in a time where there was no black people on the north end, and that my parents, it's quite possible, much even like I see replicated now in Oakland, it's quite possible for people who adopt black children to exist in a world that doesn't have any people of color in it at all. And to be able to say, oh, well, I live in the Bay and I live in Oakland. It's the most diverse place in the world. Oakland is one of the most diverse cities in the country. But in reality, the people who are in your community, the people who go to your church, the people who you have over for dinner, the people who are your close family friends are all white. How is that different from you actually having an active participatory relationship and understanding of the issues that are going on in the black community? So I want to, I'm trying to make a connection between then and now as well, because the things are still happening. They haven't changed. And I see, the implications, again, for adoptees that are coming up. So, yeah, absolutely, I feel like this, the distancing from the black community happens because if your family isn't recognizing you as a person of color, then how will you ever be able to recognize yourself as a person of color?
Wow. I know when we talked about that, I was thinking that's extremely damaging for a non-white person in a system of white supremacy, because even if the adoptive parents, the white adoptive parents, even if they use this veil of white privilege to say that the child is not white, when they step out of the house, all the other white people are going to see and function with that person as though they're not white, and that's going to have a real corrosive impact on that person's existence, I think. and causing a lot of confusion too. If you're thinking, or your parents are treating you as though you're a white person and they're not interacting with you as though you're a black person, and then you go out and other white people are calling you names and nigger this and blah, 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 I would just think that's got to be real disorienting for the non-white child in those circumstances, in addition to all of the other baggage that you would have with just being adopted in the first place. So I think, you went through this experience. Is what I just said, does that make sense? Do you think that's an accurate understanding of the situation?
I do. I absolutely do. And I think that that gets to the heart of what we're talking about in terms of, the parents who are parenting now, and right now I have a really particular stance about anybody who wants to adopt and who is just now thinking about it. So I'm not going to say potential adoptive parents, but I mean you too. But because right now I'm personally, not as representing AFAAD, personally right now I'm anti-adoption, and so I need to, and I'll make that clear a little bit later. But folks who are parenting right now, it is your responsibility to make sure that you understand your child is a child of color and that you have taken on an additional responsibility, a lifelong responsibility. Your child, there's not going to ever be one point in your child's life where they will overcome race, or that they will, because Obama's president, we live in a less racist society. And so I really, really urge parents who are already parenting to continue to challenge themselves to get education around this and to understand what it means, that they need to start calling themselves an anti-racist ally to their child and begin to educate themselves around this, because absolutely damaging to your child to not be able to identify racism, learn how to respond to it, learn how to cope with it. So many instances of suicide, self-destruction, denial of blackness, denial of whatever identity, Asian identity, so many instances of this, and so many, a lot of adoptees who are doing activist work, we also have, it's not like every adoptee feels the way that we feel. Even within our own communities, there's an extraordinary diverse perspective on adoption, and just as we have a complicated relationship to, how can I critique people who I love, they also have complicated relationships to it, and some folks, absolutely believe and glom on and participate in the thing of, I would not be where I am if I wasn't adopted, and I don't want to be in an orphanage somewhere, which is the common party line that we hear all the time. And but I feel like that perspective is a perspective that's completely informed by not wanting to distance themselves from their adoptive families and not wanting to seem ungrateful for their circumstance, even if they lost a language, even if they lost a culture, even if they don't have a connection back to their community of origin. I see it as damaging, and also just, and when we're talking about not just international adoption, this is one of the places that I like to make a connection also to the domestic Black community, is that, as far as we're concerned, that it really is about the destruction of the Black family, and it really is about placing a value on who is and who isn't able to parent Black children, and what are appropriate ways of parenting, and what are appropriate ways of mothering. And I feel like has been much documented in the social welfare system and other institutions that are founded on discourses of racism, that the way that adoption discourse emerged is really around a question of who is appropriate and who isn't. And many times it's a white social worker who is removing a child from a home and deciding that something is neglect or something is abuse, when in another cultural context it may or may not be. And so really thinking carefully about who is appropriate and who isn't appropriate parent domestically, I feel like also is really important as well. So again.
Again, I guess for today's program, UC Berkeley PhD candidate Lisa Marie Rollins. I definitely want to make the connection real important. I feel I should have focused a lot more attention on what's happening in Haiti, and we'll be making an effort to do so as the program moves forward. But just yesterday, it was reported that Haitian police detained 10 members of a U.S. Christian group after they allegedly tried to leave the country with more than 30 children. Given what we've heard in regards to your situation, can you share your view on what's unfolding right now in Haiti with just hundreds, thousands of Haitian children being removed and adopted by white parents?
Well, I first want to say there's a statement that has been written and issued by a international community of adoptees of color at adopteesofcolor.org. And AFAAD is one of the participants in the creation of this statement around our perspective and a intervention really on the discourse around the child victims of the earthquake in Haiti. So just for people to know that there are some statements that are out there written by adoptee scholars, activists, researchers, social workers. And that one is a international one. The website is growing, and if people are interested in signing on as supporters, we're welcoming anyone to do so. But we've been following the situation in Haiti, and there's so much to say. That's why I'm kind of going slow. There's so much to say. One of the things that we did articulate in that statement is that we really understand that in the time of crisis, there's a tendency to want to act quickly to help the victims of the quake, but we're really, really concerned about the ways in which not just the United States, but the Netherlands, France, other countries in Europe are descending upon Haiti and removing the children there without proper documentation and also without a full understanding of the implications of international adoption for these children. We place this removal of Haitian children also on the same historical timeline as the Korean baby list and the Vietnam baby list, so people should go and do a little bit of history work around that. It's basically the same discourse that's happening. These children are the children who are most affected. We must go in now to try to remove them. It's a large, essentially fundamentalist Christian-based groups that are moneyed and have the resources to knock on their governor's door and to apply pressure to the State Department, which we are also working on doing as well. But that are asking for these children to be brought into their state and to their countries. But, and so this Haitian baby list is no different in our eyes as far as the implications for fraud, for child trafficking. There are histories of, we talk about this also in the statement, there's, history of dubious adoption during these times of war or crisis, national disaster, etc., when European countries come in with this savior mentality and are simply removing children willy-nilly without necessarily really finding out if they have family that are alive. And the assumption is that it doesn't matter whether or not their family is alive. What matters is that they have a loving home and someone to take care of them. And where we would like to intervene on that is this question of what is an orphan, and this phrase that people keep using of every child deserves a family. And we really feel like there is a fundamental white supremacist discourse that's being used that argues that Haitian families and communities aren't the most appropriate people at this moment for children who have been traumatized to be living with and staying with. And we resist that statement that we resist the people that abuse the phrase every child deserves a family, and really ask them to rethink what they're saying and what do we mean when we're saying family, and who are we as the United States, or who are these organizations that are coming in and arguing what is best for the Haitian people when the Haitian people are in disarray. It is going to take at least a year to figure out who is missing, who is dead, who has been moved. It's as if they're utilizing the chaos of the situation simply for removal and the desires of white parents and adoption agencies to really make the money off of the children that they're bringing to the United States. And we can't leave out the economic factors in this. Adoptions from Haiti cost anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000. And let me also say a few things about adoption in Haiti. Adoption in Haiti is essentially illegal unless parents have been married for 10 years, unless parents have come to Haiti and lived, and I think it's for over 4 months. There's also international precedent that set there is a international policy called the Hague Convention, which unfortunately Haiti is not a part of, but it really should be applied to their situation, where Haiti is where there's a certain amount of education and a certain amount of paperwork that has to be completed before international adoptions are allowed from Hague Convention countries. And the whole thing is just extraordinarily troubling to us who are adult adoptees, and many of us who aren't. We've gotten so much support from people who are in the adoption community and outside, folks in the Black community who understand, the troubling aspect of all of this. But it's really just been a challenge to watch this happen, and there not being any acknowledgement of what adult adoptees who are researchers and scholars and who have experience in this, what we have to say about the situation. And the Adoptee of Color Roundtable basically is insisting and aligning ourselves with other organizations that want Haitian adoption and the removal of children stopped until there is an actual process for documenting who is alive and who isn't. Even within those 33 children that were brought to the that Christian organization that was attempted to traffic from Haiti to the Dominican Republic, there were children who were saying that I have a family,
right,
and were interviewed afterwards and were saying I have people who are alive. And so these people, I personally, so I just want to make clear that I recognize I'm going back from personally to also, speaking as an organizational member and then also as my personal self. So I just want to make sure that those are clear. But personally, those people knew what they were doing. And this whole farce of them arguing that they didn't know that there was other paperwork that they had to do, and they are just, God told them, to go and, help these children. And you know what? Maybe God did tell you to help those children, but which I don't have any argument with. My argument is the way that you're deciding to help the children. And so for me, there are multiple ways that we can think about participating in the support of Haiti and Haiti's children, and none of those involve removal. And take that $8,000 or that $20,000 and give it to a family, give it to a community that needs the support. Give it to an organization that is, or if you are so insistent on going there, take your $20,000, charter your plane, bring medical supplies, do what you got to do there, and support organizations that are prioritizing family reunification. This is all about, as far as I'm concerned personally, a global anti-African sentiment that has something to say about the value of Black culture and the value of Black families and the value of Haitian identity and culture and the self-determination of Haiti as a country. No one is asking the Haitians what they want. And my money is on Haitians wanting their families to be kept together and resources to be poured into Haiti.
I hope more people become aware of this. You seem a lot more informed about this than myself. And everybody who's listening, the public statement that was released that AFAAD is a part of, that statement is linked in the description to this program. It's the sentence, AFAAD has released a public statement. Very easy. Click it, bang. No problem. That's my duty as a victim. Click it and you can read it. Excellent. Just she or the people who crafted this public statement, it just excellent articulation of the problem and what they see, the racism that they see driving this. And as she just said, really speaks a lot to how Black families and really Black life is just incredibly devalued in a system of white supremacy. When I spoke with you last week, you talked about a comrade of yours who operates a blog, ATL Asian, and you talked about a post that she wrote about this tragedy and theft of children, and she made a great comparison. Can you share that with our listeners?
I would love to. And I'm sure I'll, if you didn't put up a link to ATL Asian's blog up there, it's certainly on a board project, and you can go check it out. But she makes this really amazing analogy, and I'm just going to read it to you really quickly. says, let's say you live with your child in a house that burns down. You're dazed, confused, and burned. Your neighbor says, I think I should take care of your child. You say, thanks for your offer, but my child really needs me now. And I think they wouldn't sleep well in a strange house. If you could just give us a tent and some food and some bandages so we can camp out for a while I get better and look into rebuilding, we'll be okay. Your neighbor says, that's too logistically complicated, and I'm concerned about the security situation. I just want your child. You say, thanks again for your concern, and I'm grateful for any help that you can give me. If you're so worried about my child, maybe you could let both of us stay in your guest room for a while. That way my child will be safe and would be able to sleep well too. Your neighbor says, no. We have an interdiction at sea policy and visa restrictions that will not be relaxed. Just give me your child. Actually, never mind. I don't even need your permission anymore. I'll just take them. This is the analogy that she has on her blog, and I feel like this analogy gets to the heart of the position of family reunification that AFAAD and the Adoptee of Color Roundtable has is, not just in international adoption, but as a system, the system of adoption is broken, and the questions around who are the people who get to make the decisions around removing from homes need to be interrogated really, really deeply. And there's I really feel like the Black community in the United States is also a victim of this analogy since early days of the ways that I'm working on one of my chapters of my dissertation. Trying to make the connection between the separation of families in slavery and the separation of families in the social welfare system, which isn't too hard of a leap to make, but just trying to make those discourses connect. And really there's something about the ways that a white supremacist society has come in and said, whatever it is that you want doesn't matter. We still have our idea of what is best for you and what is best for your family. And, I push back against that completely and really, really want to see a day when we focus our energies on healing families and providing support for families. What's interesting to me about the way that adoption has moved is that there is now a kind of adoption called open adoption, which I feel like is a better form of adoption than the ownership adoption model, which is what I call it personally, not what other people call it. The ownership adoption model, where there's no tie to the family and there's no history, until later on in the child's life. The open adoption model actually argues that having relationships with the birth family throughout the child's life are important for the child's development. And I see that as also a step in the right direction in terms of thinking about the ways that families can open their homes to children who are in need. But I also feel like it doesn't have to go all the way to the question of adoption and the question of this child is mine. Why can't you adopt an entire family? Why can't you provide support for a family that is in need without you taking ownership over the child? What is it about this question of ownership that becomes so central to having a child of my own that informs the way that people can think about reaching out and supporting their communities? And if this really is your child, then by extension, that child's birth family is part of your family and part of your community. And if that's how you really feel fundamentally, then it's your responsibility to think about that from the get-go and think about the ways that you can utilize the resources that you have to support a family rather than simply just remove a child.
Again, founder and executive director of Adopted and Fostered Adults of the African Diaspora, Lisa Marie Rollins. I like pitching to make sure that I extend a little love to other folks. If you want to read the post that Ms. Rollins just read from, the blog address ATL Asian, and that's ASIEN.blogspot.com. She has several posts about what's happening in Haiti with adoptions. Very well written. I would highly recommend checking it out. One more time, it's ATL Asian, ASIEN.blogspot.com. When I spoke with you, I guess I'll pitch. I'm being greedy. If you would like to call in to ask questions for Ms. Rollins, 347-215-6071. When I spoke with you, I guess, and to push back, you talked about, I guess, getting hate mail and people being very upset with your stance around adoption and your views on what's happening in Haiti. Can you talk about that? And I guess the people who would say, you're being extreme, that's a very radical stance to take. I mean, these people are, Haiti has been devastated. They don't have infrastructure. Leaving these children there, that's unsafe. It's cruel. It would be best to bring them to an environment where they can be taken care of and can have their needs met. It would be savage to think of leaving them in this environment the way it is right now.
Yeah, so I have been, and also many of my colleagues and a lot of folks, we've been getting that responses from folks who question our stance and who are wondering, how we could be so cold. And when in reality, we're not really the only people that have this stance. So I feel like there's a multitude of organizations that have a family reunification stance. And I actually feel as though many of the organizations that aren't Christian orphanages already working in Haiti have a reunification stance as well. So I think that we need to think about who it is that has the stance of removal and who it is that has the stance of reunification. And not to make it that binary, because I'm not arguing that there aren't individual circumstances and that there aren't, yes, I understand that there were adoptions that were approved by Haiti's government already that were in process. And so I feel like that's a different conversation than the children who are getting removed all willy-nilly right now. I feel, I definitely, as I said previously, argue that those folks from the Baptist church group where I can't remember I think they were in Idaho, were engaging in child trafficking. They were stealing children. And so that in itself, their stance of removal can also be considered radical and is really considered radical from my perspective, because I don't really understand wanting to enact additional trauma upon trauma that's already happened. Adoption itself is a traumatic experience. Being removed from a family of origin has lifelong impacts. This is something I am about to be 40, and and I am still dealing with the ramifications of my adoption. It's a lifelong thing. It's not something, and still struggling with what it means to be a grown Black woman and having close family members to me that I love. I'm still struggling with negotiating my relationships with my birth family. And it's not just me, these are common stories. And when we add on the movement of children who are not, I was an infant at adoption. Many international adoptees are older, they're not infants, they're ages 1 up to like 11. These are children who have memories, who have language, who have an understanding on some level of their history and culture, and the caretakers who took care of them in their country of origin. And so, this the removal of them from one traumatic situation and then moving them to a place with strangers, people who don't speak their language, coming from an all-Black country to essentially an all-white setting, to somewhere where no one can communicate with them, and they have just come from immense trauma, and then not being able to know how to comfort them, how to talk to them. And also on the adoptive family side, this has also been very much documented, that the adoptive family is generally, this is a joyous occasion for them. They are happy to add a child to their family. They are excited that they were able to support this child and remove the child from whatever circumstance that they were in. And so it's two completely different perspectives that are coming together that don't necessarily allow for the full exploration of the psychological and spiritual and psychic damage that happened to the child, not only from the trauma of their situation, but from the trauma of relocation. And many of the conversations that we've been having over the past 2 weeks is a revisitation of my international adoptee colleagues who are having memories of being brought off the plane and being scooped up by these strangers who are talking to them, who are all happy and who are all smiles, and they're basically asking, "Where's my mom?" And so these stories are not the stories that are heard. The only stories that we're hearing are the stories that are written by the potential adoptive families and people who want to, participate in that whole thing around I saved a Haitian child. And there's no question of the impact that this actually has on the child and whether or not the movement is actually in the best interest of the child. So that perspective, I feel like, pushes back against this perspective of we can't just leave them there. Well, what about the child's right to heal with their country, with their community? What about their right to be comforted by someone who they know, whether or not it be specifically someone who's related to them, directly by blood in the same way this Western nuclear family ideal that the adoption system in the United States and in other European countries has? What about the kinship relationship? What about different concepts of the way that family exists in terms of comfort, in terms of healing? Everybody has been traumatized. How can we support the country, the community, the family, thus the child, in healing in this traumatic situation and help them rebuild their country? That's what I have to say to that.
PhD candidate Lisa Marie Rollins. Wow, we could have you on another show. I felt that already just looking over your blog. There's a lot of material here. Easily 2-3 shows, a book, and a film, easily. If I could put you on the spot, because we had talked about this, so you're not really on the spot, and you said ungrateful, being an ungrateful child several times. If I could put you on the spot to share a snippet from the ungrateful daughter, I guess you got to set it up first. So tell them ungrateful daughter, explain, and then perhaps you can give us a snippet. You got to give us something juicy to follow your discourse on Haiti.
Go. Okay, give me just 1 second. I need to bring it up. Ungrateful Daughter is a solo performance that I have been writing for and developing on stage in the San Francisco area. I've performed it at the Marsh Theater, Stageworks Theater, Solo House, the San Francisco Solo Festival. There's been many places that I have been workshopping and also performing the piece. There's a performance in March at the Adoption and Culture Conference in Boston. I'm sorry, it's in April 29th. And I have a few other performances in the San Francisco Bay Area in March. The show is a show that talks about my experience as a transracial adoptee, and hold on, I'm opening it right now. I can read you something. It's a comedic show. It's a comedic and satirical show. So, and I've been working with the director, W. Kamau Bell, who is a comedian who does a lot of work around race in the United States, and he has his own show as well that focuses on race. And we've been working together for a few years, and the show has several different scenes. A lot of the scenes are personal, very, very personal, scenes with me and my mother, scenes with me and my father. And then some of the scenes, in school, there's also conversations around, there's a segment that's called Why I Don't Date White Boys. And it really speaks to the violence and the racist rejection that I felt growing up as a child. And this was one of the things that my director has us do as we're developing our show, or had me do as I was developing my show, is write down some of the things that I'm afraid to say out loud. And that was one of the things that I was afraid to say, because it's really, really challenging to have positions of that are so stark and so emotionally sort of grounded in my experience, when at the same time I have people like my mother and father and my brother who I love so much and that I'm very close to. And so the show was also very empowering for me to be able to say a lot of things that I had been afraid to say before, and that I wasn't really also saying in my academic work. I've been working, doing my dissertation for a while now, and I'm an artist first, and second in academic, and always have been, and so it was really just a powerful step for me to actually turn this my story into a stage show, and the responses that I've gotten from adoptees have been really strong. I've had people just come up to me after the show and cry because they've never had anyone talk about their experience on stage, and really try to get to the complexities of loving people who have raised you and supported you, but who don't necessarily understand how they're impacted by white privilege. And there's also the personal stuff, but then there's also some larger things that I talk about. There's a scene where there's a few characters that one is basically an Oprah-like character who's interviewing like an Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, and talking about their experiences adopting transracially, and they just don't really understand what the big deal is. They've taken African American studies classes, and they've been to Africa, and they've done some African drumming, and so they don't really get what everybody's problem is. They have a connection to the Black community, and they love their child despite their race. So there's a lot of satirical kinds of things that I do in the show that are comedic, so people can actually engage with the material and not be distanced by the strong message. So let's see. I will read. I have.
Can we hear why I don't?
Yeah, sure. I have. I'm just going to read a poem.
Okay.
From that's in the middle of the piece. The majority of it is actual dialogue with actual characters, but there's a couple poetic places where I step out and do some spoken word stuff. So this is one piece. This piece is called Mulatto Story. It's not just a simple, tragic mulatto story. It's a painful, whitewashed, hard-to-divin old tale of anger. I shift slightly when my father reaches to touch me. Sometimes my stomach turns when he introduces me as his daughter. So proud I am ashamed, yet my fingers begin their ritual clenching closed, forcing out the blood so I can stand it when I have to smile brightly with the same tired joke. Don't we look alike? He is so simple and unknowing, oblivious to ice shooting through, contorting my fingers, knotting up my belly, freezing me up with cold hate that somehow lives side by side with my childhood love. I'm not sure how much more I can stand when near him I wish his early death and from a distance call up all his gentleness. I am a conflicted suicide attempt, not sure whether or not to jump, hurl myself away from the history of him, teaching me how to tie Boy Scout knots, how to start fire with 2 sticks. I could survive in the forest, y'all. Or maybe I should instead take some painkillers and slide into his gentle arms, forget chains around black necks, forgive heads cut off on slave ships, and feel this brand that's burnt into my side. Or should I instead violate all the boundaries, plow through the wall of respect for your elders, obey your parents, love your enemy, and simply scream the next time I am shown off, presentable and pleasant? This is my daughter. She's got a degree. She's got black skin. Doesn't she look like me? Thank you.
Lisa Marie Rollins, Ungrateful Daughter. Wow. I don't know. I'm feeling a little greedy today. If there's a poem connected with Why I Don't Date White Boys, could we get a sample of that?
There isn't, but there isn't. It's mostly dialogue and has to do with sort of a disconnection thing that I was trying to work through around not just why I Don't Date White Boys is the where it emerged from, but it also connects to a larger issue that adoptees have around making our ability or inability to create intimate relationships with friends, family, and any relationship, lover relationships, marriages, and how much more of a struggle it is sometimes for us because we have a initial break in a connection with someone who is supposed to, by all, accounts, supposed to love us regardless and no matter what, was able to relinquish their connection to us, and whether or not, and how that impacts our ability to see ourselves as worthy of love or see ourselves as worthy of having whole, healthy relationships. And so that's part of what that piece does. And but then also as a transracial adoptee, that segment works out, what it means to be in a setting where I was a little girl growing up in a place where the value of Black girl identity and Black womanhood was not there, and also there was no understanding of it either. I looked and now, of course, as a Black feminist theorist and someone who's doing work around this, thinking of there's an actual history around resistance against and pushback and assertion of Black female identity and Black womanhood as beautiful, that if I would have, somebody would have been, talking to me about as a child or understanding myself as beautiful, that I might not have been so completely isolated and, shut out by the ways that white men, or by boys at that time treated me. And because I'm supposed to be part of this community, and Jesus loves the little children, all the little children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. That's the rhetoric that we get. But in reality, when it comes to making these connections, and little white boys don't like little Black girls in these particular settings, and it's not. And again, this isn't just my experience. This is an experience of many transracial adoptees who've grown up in isolated from communities of color, where they go through their entire high school and don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner until they get to university, where there's other people of color there.
Wow. Wow. I'm very pleased with the program. Hit everything I wanted, excellent information, and stuff I didn't even get to. That's why, stuff I didn't even get to easily. The life and times of Lisa Marie.
I'm really happy to come back. Yeah.
We will have to do, I'll give you an example of the questions that I left hanging.
Sure.
With what you said about if you're a white person or white parent and you adopt a non-white child, you have to make a lifelong commitment to anti-racism. One of my many hanging questions was, have your parents demonstrated a lifelong commitment to anti-racism? You don't have to answer that. That's just one of the questions that I had written, waiting for an answer. We'll have to do it again. Can you give out as much information as you can about how folks can get in touch with Lisa Marie Rollins if they want to contact about AFAAD, Earth Project, Ungrateful Daughter, or any other tidbits? How can they get in contact with you?
Well, absolutely. A Birth Project is my blog. You can contact me through there, or at the AFAAD website, afaadinfo@gmail.com.
Outstanding. It has been a pleasure to have you on the program. Gorgeous, almost 40 pictures on the blog. And you can see her when I thought that was the cutest picture in the world. You can see her when she's much younger, I suspect, with her glasses and everything. She looks uncomfortable in the veil of white privilege.
Yeah, and let me say that was a day that we were doing picture day, and me and the photographer were engaged in a straight up race battle. And I can talk to you about that at some other time. So you'll see the hate coming out of my eyes in that photo, for real.
Ooh. We got to hear about that story when you make your return trip. Just go to the blog, birthproject.wordpress.com. You'll see it. Incredible photograph, incredible person. Lisa Marie Rollins, Executive Director and founder of the Adopted and Fostered Adults of the African Diaspora and PhD candidate, University of California at Berkeley. Thank you for sharing some of your Monday morning with us. Best wishes with your PhD, ungrateful daughter, and we will definitely look to get you back on the program as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for representing adoptees of color, because it's a really important perspective.
Ditto. I agree wholeheartedly. I will definitely be in touch and take excellent care. We will look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be back to wrap up the program. Oh, man, Blog Talk is good. They killed my switchboard. I had one person who called in at 347, and they killed my switchboard, so I can't get them on and can't do my commercial. Blog Talk killed it immediately today. Wow. Oh, well, can't do a commercial. I can at least share information with the folks. There are other programs I wanted people to check out. I know people are fans of Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. as well as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., he will be on talktainmentradio.com today at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. That's Talktainment, TAINMENT, radio.com. You can check that out. I think you can call in as well and ask questions or what have you. Mr. Fuller, working hard. He's 80 and still going strong. He will also be on the Nikki Love Inc. show here at Blog Talk Radio. I believe that's airing tomorrow. I think I even have the information here. I work hard. Yes, airing tomorrow, February 2nd at 7 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Wow. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what I got on my screen. So I'm assuming that's correct. So 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., he will be on the Cultural War show here at Blog Talk Radio. I would read the link, but it's very long. So what I would suggest is at Blog Talk Radio, you can just put in a search for Neely Fuller, and when the search results come back, look to the far right, and you'll see on air or upcoming, and you'll see Cultural War Show. That's the one with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. It's tomorrow. It's showing 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. That's kind of late, but that's what they got. So, check it out. The time might be wrong as well. Keep that in mind, too, because I know some of my shows, the time has been incorrect. So I guess go to the site and double-check to make sure the time is correct if you want to listen live. But that's what is showing on my screen, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, the same folks, was on their show yesterday. So you can listen to the archive of that program. Just go to the site and you'll see it. It's the most recent program. You'll see a picture of her there. You can click on it, download it, whatever the case may be. Support Mr. Fuller, Dr. Welsing. Should be great programs, constructive information. CREE, I guess I can dump all the programs you should be checking out. CREE, Counter Racist Evolving Engineer. She has a program this weekend with Mr. Josh Wickett. He has done a lot of excellent counter-racist film reviews. You can see them at thecode.net. That program will be airing this Sunday. That'll be February 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Central. That's Josh Wickett on the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer program here at Blog Talk Radio. Should be very interesting. I will be there live to listen in. You can also support Hakima. You should definitely check out her debut program this Saturday, February 6th. It is airing at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific. She'll be talking about skin whitening creams, damage inflicted on non-white people, dangers behind those creams, history, who markets these creams. It's right here at Blog Talk Radio. Name of the program, Dying to Be White, this Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. That's all the other programs. This program, Context of White Supremacy, next broadcast will also be Saturday. We will have Dr. Verna Keith. She recently conducted a study. She's a professor at Texas A&M. She recently conducted a study, shows the correlation between discrimination, racism, white supremacy, and depression amongst black females. She's also written a book on the very same topic, In and Out of Our Right Minds, just talking about various aspects of trauma, physical and emotional, that black females deal with because of racism, white supremacy. This program will be airing Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Pacific. Excuse me. Ooh, I was looking at the incorrect time. Back that up. This program will be airing Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, and 12 noon Pacific. Dr. Verna Keith from Texas A&M and Dr. Frances Cress-Welsing. She'll be back next Sunday at same time as a big game next weekend. Sunday at 6 o'clock Eastern. Dr. Welsing will be back. Let's see. Any other information I had to get out before the program ends? Yeah, I definitely know one thing. A non-white person, I have never brought up the concept of VGQ on this program, Victims Guaranteed Qualification. I haven't brought it up because most of the time we have white guests on the program, so there's no need for it. But I wholeheartedly endorse non-white people taking whatever view they think is accurate about racism, white supremacy. I think it would be most constructive if non-white people did not squabble and bicker with other non-white people about their views on racism, white supremacy. My view, as long as white supremacy exists, I really don't care what other non-white people think about my views about racism, white supremacy. The white people who practice racism, white supremacy, they are causing the problem. If I'm going to have an argument with anybody about racism, it's going to be with another white person. I do not have a problem exchanging views with non-white people. Don't have a problem if we do not come to the same conclusion, but there's not going to be an argument. There's not going to be any animosity because, forgive the metaphor, but if another slave at the bottom of the ship does not agree with me, I don't care. I don't care if Toby doesn't like my view about racism. That is totally irrelevant. And I think non-white people should really think about that because I've observed a lot of conflict come up where non-white people don't agree about what's happening or what we think should be done about this. I think that would be really constructive. I just haven't brought it up on the program, as I said, because generally I have white guests here, so it doesn't matter. That's who I'm supposed to be arguing with. If we don't have agreement, argue with the white person. I argue with Tim Wise all day long. Another non-white, Lisa Marie Rollins and I, you will never hear an argument between us on this program or any other non-white person. Total waste of time. And I want you to think about that too. Really, I think that's most accurate. That's Toby and another slave arguing in the cotton field about what they think about the plantation. I think that's pretty much what it boils down to, and it's total foolishness. Also, you can promote this show and all the other programs that I named at Blog Talk Radio. You can easily promote these shows. You can get the HTML code to put the player up on your blog site or any place else where you can put HTML code. You can put it up and promote any of these programs. That would be very helpful. I'm sure Cree, myself, Hakima, and all the other hosts at Blog Talk would appreciate it if you promoted the programs if you think they are constructive. If you don't think they're constructive, don't worry about it. No problem. Yeah, I think I hit all the things I had to hit. I'm ecstatic. I think the program was great. Hopefully we can get Ms. Rollins back. As I said, next program is Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. Thank Ms. Rollins, and we'll be back this weekend. Context of white supremacy. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Cows signing out.